Welcome to Palm Paradise, powered by Boca Magazine. I'm Olivia Holaus.
I'm Portia Smith-Dejean.
And I'm Christiana Lilly, and we are the Palm Queens. Happy birthday, Boca Raton.
Oh my gosh, 100.
And in honor of that, we did a special centennial issue with Boca Magazine. And this, if you couldn't tell, it's shot at the Boca Raton. We had the costume from the Wick, and we also had accessories from the Boca Raton Historical Society. So this was such a labor of love. I know both of you had flipped through it, and it's just been so fun working with the Historical Society and telling the stories from Boca Raton. And the feedback we've been getting is great. So that was just such a fun way to be able to wish Boca Raton a happy birthday.
That's really cool. And actually, Lori, your art director, she was super excited to tell me that she used artifacts from the Boca Raton Historical Society.
Yes.
You know, in her style pages, which I thought was really clever.
That's awesome. Lori always does such a good job when she styles everything. And that's just that last touch. I love that.
I know. She was worried. She was like, you know, I'm going to the museum and like, oh, could I use it for a shoot? And they were like, yeah, sure. She was worried they'd be like, we need to bring security. You know,
Gloves.
with the gloves. No, we had so many fun things from the 20s. And so I always sneak up upstairs to look at the photo shoots. I'm like, what's going on? And it was just so fun seeing, like, we had the old phones, you know, when it was like the 2 pieces, shoes,
cool.
Newspapers, magazines, like from the 20s and everything. And then we had old stuff from IBM, you know, and then mixing that with contemporary looks and also seeing how the 20s is kind of back in style. We had some Chanel shoes that definitely, like, I think a flapper would have been all over them if she saw them.
Oh, I love
Well, I didn't
that.
even know the dress on the cover was from the Wick, you know, because I thought it was a dress from today.
Yeah, yeah. I would have definitely thought that.
Yeah.
So I do love the article about the history of Boca Raton, where you kind of highlight, you know,
The Eras Tour.
The Eras Tour. Like, I can't even, you know, you basically summed up 100 years in a few pages, but I really love your other piece on the women who shaped Boca.
Yes, that was so much fun. I spent so much time with Sue at the Boca Raton Historical Society because I didn't want to miss anybody and make sure that people from different communities, like, you know, from Pearl City and the Jewish community, people that were in the arts, people that were in medicine. We have the first bus driver in Boca was a woman, and she drove a Model T.
Wow.
She would take the kids to Del Rey because there wasn't a school in Boca yet. Obviously, we have Hildegard Stein, who, you know, her husband came down here, who came down here for the Boca Raton. And then she ended up helping found the Boca Raton Museum of Art. And just all these great things. And, like, you know, the deaconesses from the black churches, because they actually were 2 churches and they shared a church, and they would rotate on Sundays who got to use the church. And so, like, those anecdotes, I think, were so much fun that we were like, we didn't want it to be a Wikipedia page about Boca.
Yeah,
you can go on the Boca Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
We wanted those fun anecdotes about the people that were here. What was life like when they first started here? Because I can't even imagine moving here in 1925.
No.
A swamp.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Bug-infested swampland. I had no thank you.
No.
Well, when we had that panel at the Historical Society, I remember I asked Sue, you know, what kind of woman did it take to want to move here? To be like, that sounds fun. You know?
Swampland and
I don't need a
mosquitoes.
toilet.
Sign me up.
I don't need ice.
It's really cool. And, you know, I keep thinking now what Boca will look like 100 years from now. Who knows? Maybe the editor-in-chief of Boca will be writing about us, the Palm Queens.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we won't be here
Forefront
to
of
see it.
podcasting.
But seriously, think about it, right?
It's true. It's true. Maybe we'll be in the Boca Museum of Art. We'll have our own little exhibit with the podcast mics.
Well, that was something that was interesting when I was at the museum, and they were talking about they actually have a harder time getting photos from modern day than back in the day. Because back then, people took photos, they developed them, and they stored them. And now everybody just kind of takes photos, but they'll delete them or they never put them on the computer.
Phone. Like,
You know, or
guilty.
people don't think to take photos of things because, you know, for us, we would be like, it's just the mall. But 50 years from now, I want to see a picture of the mall when it first opened.
Wow.
This historic shopping center.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So we should be sending Susan Gillis a bunch of our photos.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
But
loading
it's
up
but
an
it's so
inbox.
true though that now everything's on the iPhone. Like I don't even know, over 50,000 photos.
Same.
Most of them are
Same.
like not even I'll never go back to. But But they are, I know, digitizing, all of their archives, because moving forward, it won't be so much, paper. It'll be all, on the computer.
And that was throughout the whole process of putting this issue together, was constantly emailing. Do you have a picture of Eula Roberson? Do you have a picture of this person? Or do you have a picture of this place, of Teen Town? I love learning about Teen Town. You had to be a Boca resident to go to Teen Town. And the kids had nothing to do because it was this tiny town. And so they made Teen Town. It was like a little teen club that had like pool tables and dances and stuff. And the Deerfield Beach and the Del Rey kids got jealous because only the Boca kids could go.
Okay, Teen
It was
Town.
already, it was like
Teen
basically a members club already.
Yeah,
Which is now the rage, right?
Yeah.
They already had it going.
Yeah,
Teen
Town.
And so many other things are turning 100 this year, but not doing it like Boca. I know Coral Gables, Deerfield Beach, Jupiter. And I'm like, you don't have Weezer playing at your concert, at your centennial concert in May.
Yes.
Oh, like... That was so cool hearing that Weezer is going to be coming at the Meisner Park Amphitheater. And then the next day, this is all going to be Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah.
At the Brick, there's going to be a huge like sort of festival there. And then they're going to be ending it with a drone show, which is everybody's doing drone shows.
Everybody's doing that.
I haven't seen one yet, so maybe this is our time to catch one finally. And then you've got the Addison also in November. They're turning 100, and so they're planning also a really big shindig. So
and they're partnering with the Boca Raton Police Department because the police department is turning 100, and then FPL is turning 100.
Oh.
And Boca was one of like not the very first, but one of the first communities to get power. So now when I see those pictures of like the little telephone wires and everything, I'm like, oh, that must have been really exciting. Like, FPL's coming to town.
the one truck.
Powering all of South Florida.
Well, we did lose power at our home like 2 weeks ago. And my kids opened the windows and they were like staring out, looking at the FPL truck. We had all these guys working on our, electrical box. So, yeah, there's still some excitement.
And when it's hurricane season, you want those FPL guys out fast.
Them.
Yeah.
You pack lunches, water bottles, all kinds. Do you need any help?
Can I get you a beer?
But honestly, in honor of your centennial issue, we've got two awesome guests today.
Yes, and one is from the Boca Raton, which is turning 100, and I had a sit-down interview with the president and CEO, so stay tuned to hear all about that history. All right, and talking about the centennial, we have Daniel Hostettler, who is the president and CEO of the Boca Raton. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast and coming on today.
Well, thank you for having me.
So I know everybody's talking about the city of Boca turning 100, but little do they know maybe that just in a couple more months, about 6 months or so, the Boca Raton is also going to be turning 100.
That's right, February 6th next year.
What do you guys have in stores? You guys don't do anything small at the resort.
Well, that's true. So our plan, the city of Boca Raton, founded by Addison Meisner, and the resort founded by Addison Meisner. So really, it's part of the fabric of the city. So we wanted to start in the fourth quarter of this year, and then we will go through the entire year, culminating in December 31st of 26. When I was hired, one of the things that the Dell family wanted was for the Boca Raton to be one of America's most admired resorts, as it had been decades ago, by the time it turns 100 in 26. So we think we've done a pretty good job in the last 4 years, but we're going to start with a coffee table book in partnership with Azuline that's going to tell about history and the rebuilding, which will be great. We have a black tie gala in January with John Legend to celebrate our sort of official birthday.
Like I said, you guys don't do anything small.
We have a partnership with World Polo League in Wellington, so we're going to bring some sort of polo elements to the property because polo was such a big part of what we did decades ago. Some sort of golf because again, Royal Palm Golf used to be one of the golf courses at the Boca Raton. So really looking back at the entire history, a historic celebration. We've sponsored this year's Boca History Museum did an Addison Meisner display for the better part of this year. That'll be moving to the Boca Raton for next year, so hotel guests and members can enjoy that. So a whole bunch of things across the entire year, culminating with some sort of themed New Year's Eve party at the end, which we haven't quite figured out yet.
Well, I'm sure whenever you have it figured out, we're all going to want to go there.
I hope so.
And so speaking of that exhibit, so the history has been a really big part of sort of the DNA of
Yes.
the Boca Raton, you know, whether it's the architectures, you have architecture tours there. What are some other fun things maybe that you've learned about the property in your time there?
Well, we used Garcia Stromberg to redo the property with us when we reimagined it. And George was phenomenal at saying that we weren't going to touch the envelope of the building because we didn't want anyone thinking that we were better architects than Addison Meisner. And so anything we did add on, he wanted to make sure people knew it was an add-on. So the porte cochere that only had 2 lanes for parking cars, and cars are much larger nowadays.
Yes.
We needed extra lanes, and so we built the new one out of sort of just simple metal. And the addition to what is now Sadel's is a big glass box, which you would know didn't exist, 100 years ago. So we were very conscious of not messing with the historic nature of the building, but at the same time, we wanted to take a different approach from the breakers and make it feel more contemporary inside, which is why we worked with Rockwell, a very trendy interior design firm out of New York City, to really reconcept the interiors of the property to feel more contemporary.
And
so I think it's a great mix.
Yeah, I think you guys have really married history with contemporary very
Right.
well. And speaking of contemporary, something new at the resort is Beach Club.
Yes, and I was just going to say, I think we did a great job there. Beach Club built in the early 80s, if I recall, and had that sort of feel and vibe on the outside, but was getting a little tired on the inside, and so has been really reconcepted as what I call a kinder, gentler version of Miami. So we wanted that sort of sexiness of a beach hotel and of that Miami experience, and yet a lot of younger families are no longer going to Miami because it's maybe not as family friendly as it was earlier, and so we wanted it to also be family friendly, and I think we've got that really nice blend of being sort of chic, barefoot, elegant.
And there's a lot of highlights there, but I know I saw recently on social media, you guys have a sunscreen booth. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I saw it on social media at another hotel, and I said, we have to get one of these things. It's a booth with the logo of the property on it, and it spins 360 degrees around you and moves up and down and just paints you with suntan lotion. I thought, what a great Instagrammable moment, and you found us on Instagram that way. So, it works, and it's sustainable, and it's a fantastic sort of fun thing for members and guests to do when they're on the beach.
No one's getting sunburned at Beach Club.
That's right. All complimentary suntan lotion.
And the Fiats, you guys have a fleet of Fiats.
We have a Fiat 500 car boat. So it is a Fiat 500 convertible, a little Cinquecento, they called them in Italy, and it sits on top of a boat body with a little 150 horsepower, well, not so little. For on a boat that size, it can go up to 30, 40 miles an hour, and it goes out every afternoon for 3 or 4 hours and takes guests on a complimentary 10-minute cruise around Lake Boca, so you can sort of see the property from the water, and brings them back again. And we introduced that with the opening of the beach club. It's got the logo on the side, so another Instagram moment, and the kids just absolutely adore it.
I haven't tried it yet, but that's on my list.
That's
so I'm going to be stopping
fun.
by to try that out. And with new traditions coming up at the Boca Raton, Artisans of Wine and Food, and I know that was just hugely successful in its first year in January, and I hear it's coming back next year?
It is. Yeah, that's a real passion project of mine. The Napa Valley Vintners have been doing a food and wine program with a charitable element for 40 years. And 20 years ago, early in my career, I was responsible for running it for the 8 years that I was at Meadowood in the Napa Valley.
Okay.
And I've always wanted to recreate it and haven't had a big enough venue to do so, which there's not many bigger venues than the Boca Raton. So it really, last year we partnered with them. We had 125 vintners, which is the largest amount of Napa Valley vintners in one place at one time ever in the world outside of the Napa Valley, which was really, really fantastic. So all levels of wineries and vintners, along with 25 visiting celebrity chefs. And it's an entire weekend, sort of Friday evening, you pick your dinner and which chef you want to dine on their menu and which vintner you want to see. And then Saturday, you get to taste them all at the tasting. Some of them play golf, so you can play golf in in the golf tournament with them. It's a weekend pass. And then Saturday evening is a gala. And the difference between a lot of charitable events is the vintners sit at every table. So you are at a guest with a random vintner. You don't know who you're going to be with. They're pouring their wines for you. They're borrowing wines from their colleagues at the next table and pouring those wines. So it's really interactive and fun. And then there's an auction component that all goes to charity. So this year's charity is Place of Hope, which is really a phenomenal local charity doing amazing things for at-risk youth that are aging out of foster care. And so it's really, there's a lot of food and wine events in the world, but not many of them combine it with a charitable element. So I love that people can come meet chefs and vintners and have a great weekend and also leave feeling like they contributed to something worthy.
And I think something to note about the event at the Boca Raton was that you guys didn't have it be like 10,000 people. You wanted to keep it to an amount where people aren't...
Limited to 400 people for the weekend, because we really want that interaction with the vintners. And then the Saturday night gala, we take up to about 750 people. And this year's guest chef is Mario Carbone from Major Food Group. Just this weekend, he did Carbones on the Beach in Miami, which sells out every year as part of the F1. And so he is recreating that and calling it Carbones at the Boca Raton for one night only. So we think that'll be a huge draw as well.
Absolutely. And so is there anything else you'd like to share about what's going on at the resort right now?
We're working on phase 3 of our capital plan, which will be to come back and do a renovation of the golf course next year, and all 350 of the original cloister rooms, which was the original portion of the hotel, right? As well as an expansion of our fitness program, et cetera. So it's sort of the final really big chunk of capital improvements in our $500 million plan.
It's just been so fun when we were working on our centennial issue, because the founding of Boca was centered around building the Boca Raton, or that's why people came down to this tiny farm town and just inundated.
And I don't think not everyone knows that it's not very dissimilar from the Beverly Hills Hotel in Beverly Hills, where you built the hotel first as the developer so that people had a place to stay while you sold them a lot and real estate, right? And that was the exact same thing here in Boca. They built the hotel to sell lots in this sleepy farming community to future home buyers.
And a lot of people know the Addison, for example, as it's a wedding venue, but that's where Meisner lived.
Corporate
that's where
offices,
the corporate offices were there. That's where your dinner parties are, in the drafting rooms where they were planning out the Boca Raton.
That's right.
I love that. There's just so much history in Boca Raton, and we're really glad to be celebrating the centennial. All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on today, and everybody head over to the Boca Raton.
Thank you very much.
Wow, that was so interesting. Like all of these amazing new enhancements at the Boca Raton. I can't wait.
I know. I want to go on the Fiat so bad. That's my next thing, is the Fiat.
No, seriously. Those seem so
Can we film our next episode there?
Yeah, just remember I can't swim.
Oh, no. You still need to work on that.
That's right. Oh, my God. Well, we're both good swimmers. We'll come to the rescue.
Yeah. Exactly.
But the tanning, I'll take that. Not the tanning.
I know. I saw that on
suntan.
And the wine weekend.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Sign me up.
And the anniversary party with John Legend.
Sign me up.
I've seen him. That man. Oh my God.
Wait, you've seen him live?
Yeah, John Legend. I've seen him live. Yeah, so I just heard about that. And I was like, of course the Boca Raton would have John Legend as their guest performer.
Yeah, they go big or go home.
Exactly. I love that.
So our next guest, actually, she runs the tours of the Boca Raton. She does an architectural tour. So she was also very helpful with the centennial issue of Boca Magazine. So stay tuned for her.
And we are now joined by Susan Gillis, the curator for the Boca Raton Historical Society and the Schmidt Boca Raton History Museum. Sue, it is such a treat to have you.
Well,
welcome, Sue.
I'm happy to be here.
I feel like I see you every week now.
Well, especially since you work so closely on this issue,
No,
right?
your team was so helpful. Every time I would ask for a photo or fact check or whatever, it was like a couple hours later, here you go. I don't even know how you go through all the photos. How many items are there at the museum?
Well, there are 18,000 photographs.
And she finds them when I need them.
100 running feet of archives. There are several thousand objects. And we do have a database, so that's the advance.
Because it keeps growing, so you need to be super organized.
You have to stay on top of it all the time, yes.
Yeah.
So
that's my job.
Do you organize it by year or by the item in question?
All of the above. That's what it's called Past Perfect. It's a database that history museums use all over the U.S. and it allows you to cross-reference the heck out of anything. So yes, all of those things. So I can search depending on your needs.
Well,
cool.
Sue, we all love you. I mean, you have a memory that I don't think anyone can match. You will remember any detail. I mean, how did your love for history begin?
Well, that's a great question. My family have always loved history and historical novels. And remember, I grew up in the era when there were lots of historically oriented, not necessarily accurate shows on television, Disney shows and so on. And one of my favorites was called The Swamp Fox. Now, he's a real person, okay? Francis Marion was a great hero in the American Revolution. So my mom was a teacher. She would have the summers off, and she and my little brother and I would go in search of the battles and skirmishes and so on mentioned in these various novels. And that took me eventually in 1970 or so to Williamsburg, Virginia. I was totally in love. I said, I must go to school here. And that is what happened.
Wait, so you were in love with Williamsburg or you were in love with someone?
No, I was
Excuse me.
loving Williamsburg.
Okay, got it. No, so it sounds like, your love for history really grew very organically. Your family had a good time with it. And so that explains how you make history, because you really make it fun for us.
Oh, that is a very kind thing
Yeah.
to say, and I really appreciate that compliment, because that is my goal, really, is to make it not boring and fact memorization. That's not what it's about. We can all relate to how people lived in another time. Yes.
And preparing for the centennial, I know you guys are a small but mighty team, and I know you've been inundated probably from media across Florida,
Yes.
as I know it's not just in Boca that people are interested in this.
Yes.
What did that take as a team, and how did you guys prepare, knowing this onslaught was coming on?
Well, I've got to brag a little on us in the first place. I've been in business for 50 years now, for reals. When we typed catalog cards one at the time. Okay. So we have taken all these years. I've been there for 23 years. It took about 15 years to get all our backlog into a database. But I'm so spoiled now because I just go in there and I look up 1925 or I look up Boca Raton Club or whatever it is, and up pops all this information. It's so exciting. And I just pop those into the folders I need. Hey, this is for Christiana, for the Boca Mag issue or whatever it is, and go. So what a difference that digitization and, of course, computers, I mean, we just can't even imagine life without. So that was really the key. And also, we think about it a lot since that's our year of birth, if you will. Anyway, and we've been planning for quite some time. Yes.
Well, you've been planning for quite some time, and you have created and published a beautiful book, the Centennial book.
Dream City.
Dream
yes, we have a
City.
copy at the office.
I have several copies, and just can't wait to give them out. So talk to us about that process. I mean, where do you even begin?
Well, that's a good question. I have published, this is my 8th or 9th books. Sue doesn't ever remember anymore. A lot of them are pictorial histories. I started with Fort Lauderdale. They have a fabulous collection at that historical society. I've done several for ours. And of course, most of the photographs in our collection, yours truly cataloged. So they're in the back of my brain, you know what I'm saying? But also, I was a history and an anthropology major. My degrees are in anthro. And I'm very interested in everyday life of everyday people, not just pretty buildings, that's important, but people doing things, good stories. And of course, we are very devoted to representing the diversity of our community, because in the 100 years ago, we had a white community, we had a black community, we had a Japanese community. Really fascinating and unusual. So I wanted to represent that, and a little bit of, the good, the bad, education, churches, having a party, swimming at the beach, all the things that people do today.
Yeah, it's really a beautiful coffee table book. I urge everyone to at least grab a copy.
Dream City. How can people get Dream City?
Well, they can go online. There's a QR code for you on our website, bocahistory.org, and they can come visit our beautiful museum.
And I hope everybody does come visit.
I'll
Please do.
sponsor a giveaway.
Ooh,
Yes. Just thought about that. I'll sponsor a giveaway.
All right. So what's the stipulations here for our giveaway?
We'll figure that one out afterwards.
So we'll go on our social media where we will have a giveaway of Dream City, courtesy of Olivia. Thank you so much.
But you talk about all these amazing, people who really created Boca Raton. Who do you have a favorite? Like, do you have a standout person?
Oh my gosh, that's a really hard question. Well, I often tell this story, so if you've heard it before, just bear with me. Floyd Mitchell came in 1922 or 3. Her dad had invested in South Florida. Now, this was the beginning of the Florida Land Boom. And she's from Alabama, a newlywed. Her husband is J.C., who will be our future mayor. And they came from civilization. They move into the only available lodging, which is like this cabin, essentially, with no running water, with an outhouse, no lights, of course. And her husband said, "Are you sure you want to stay?" And she replied, "Wild horses couldn't drag me away." I said, "No, that's a Boca cow." And she lived to be quite an elderly lady. And so her wonderful collections came to our organization because my predecessor was her next door neighbor.
Oh, okay.
So it all worked out in the end. But she was a great storyteller, and she lived, when they got here, they almost immediately went through this horrible hurricane they were totally unprepared for. So there's wonderful stories, and her family's still here. The Mitchells are still here.
And J.C. Mitchell, you guys might recognize the school.
Yes.
Named after him. Yeah.
That's Mr. Mitchell, absolutely.
That was something that was fun to put together in the book, was where did that name come from? Like, Clint Moore was a person?
Yes.
I know, right?
Calusa were people?
That's Clint Moore's. Isn't that funny? In all the years I've been here, that's the number one most asked question.
Really?
Who the heck is Clint Moore?
Yeah.
And he's a hero.
Who is Clint Moore?
Okay. Well, he was a farmer. Number one, he was a paver. And he paved a lot of roads for the town back in 25 when we were New City. Well, the boom went bust. Spoiler alert, everybody. The boom went bust. The city paid him like, a penny on whatever. He just got nothing for it. So he went back to farming in basically what today is North Boca. But in the 40s, the county named this little farm road for him because he had built drainage canals to eliminate the sand fly as a pest, because that's a breeding ground, just like mosquitoes. And there was a terrible, horrible, nasty, they're little tiny things that go through your screen. So he's a pest control hero, and in my opinion, the most important. So that's something we all really require today, isn't it?
So it was basically, we can't pay you for your service, but we will name a road after you.
Exactly.
And Boca Magazine is on that road now.
I know, that's so true. And then
Mr. Moore.
Another thing I had learned from Sue was it's not Yamato. We all say Yamato, but it's Yamato, right?
Yamato.
So,
If you go to our YouTube site, and we have great things on our
you do.
YouTube site, by the way. There is Frank Kamiya, who was one of the Yamato settlers, saying it's Yamato. Actually, he said Yamato. He was a little southern guy. But that's how the old timers pronounce it, including the Japanese folks.
So cool. So question. So I know we've got your favorite person from Boca, and with all the archives and everything from past, present, and maybe even future. What's your favorite thing about Boca?
Oh, my goodness. My favorite thing is when I talk to longtime residents, I say, why are you here? Why have you stayed? Quality of life. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Where do you go to a town where people are proud to be where they're from, aren't trying to get out, have come here because they wanted to, not because they had to? And that impresses me. And even our smallest and, say, not wealthiest community like Pearl City, the residents are very attached to their community and proud of their community. Oh, that makes the historic preservationist heart beat harder. I mean,
and they're working hard to preserve Pearl City. Yeah,
very much so. And that's just so wonderful. It's refreshing. I used to work in Fort Lauderdale. What can I say? We tear down, tear down, tear down.
Yeah.
So it's not that we don't do that here, but there's definitely a different attitude.
well, that's another question, though. Like, how do you balance growth and also historic preservation? I mean, in a perfect world, Sue, how do we do that?
Well, first of all, obviously, you can't save everything. Everybody likes to say that, but we're well on our way to not saving anything, unfortunately. At this point, ironically, we were thinking about this. Usually 50 years or more, you're eligible for historic designation at the local level or as a National Register property. And half of our town is that age. Even the condominiums are that age. Now, do we want to preserve all of them? No. But what we would like is a select representation of the different types of architecture and styles, mid-century modern, which is very in vogue now, and so on, and let people appreciate that for the future. And even in beautiful neighborhoods like Old Floresta, when it was designated back in, I think, 90, a historic district, and that's where the Meisner homes are, it's maintained and increased its value due to that preservation status. Otherwise, we would be like, shall I mention, Rio Vista and Fort Lauderdale, which was a very similar neighborhood, but everything's a tear down. And all those beautiful 20s homes replaced with McMansions and so on. Now, I've got nothing wrong with a McMansion. It's just, let's save some of the old.
Absolutely.
And I have nothing against modern architecture or modern design. It's all
It's
good.
going to be historical architecture one day.
Let's work. And if you go to England or Italy, you see old buildings right next door to a modern one. That's fine. That's life. That's reality. Let's do that. Embrace the past and the present.
And the Historical Society worked with DISC locally to get historical preservation for Pearl City. Can you talk about what an accomplishment that was in the process of doing that?
It's really great. Well, Pearl City, the older part of Pearl City, which is south of Glades, was designated through their desires, the residents' desires, in 2000 as a historic district. But they wanted to be a National Register district, include Dixie Manor and Lincoln Court, which is just north of Glades. Those neighborhoods came on in the 40s. And they worked together with our dear friend Bonnie Dearborn, who's an old volunteer of ours. And we went through all of our files, old plat books, anything we could find to help out with the designation application, which is rather challenging. And it took a couple of years to work on.
I read the application. It's very tedious.
Yes, very detailed. You have to dot the I's and cross the T's just the way they want it and all that. So I'm really proud. I feel like I had a part, although my part was, here's some stuff. But I know they're very, very proud. And it is our first National Register Historic District in town, which is a great honor. I don't know if your audience knows this, but it is a great honor. Pearl City's quite the survivor.
Is there another part in town that should also have that same designation?
Who would you nominate next?
I would definitely do Floresta. Another neighborhood that's overlooked is Spanish Village. It's just north of City Hall. There's about 10 Meisner-designed buildings there. They're little cottages. Now they're worth a lot of money now. Great location, right? The estate section over east of the Intercoastal has some beautiful homes from Maurice Facio, who was a very famous Palm Beach architect, and so on. And then there are other neighborhoods like Camino Gardens and even Royal Oak Hills that have a lot of great representation of that mid-century style. Again, not everything. But a historic district is not as restrictive as individual historic designations, and it gives the community power to get grants and so on. Individual property owners are not eligible for grant money. That's just the way, not with governmental grants. But districts are, and they can do landscaping improvements, structural improvements, all kinds of things that all the members of the district could benefit from. So that's the way to go.
Cool.
There's so much to learn at both the museum and through the Historical Society. How can people support the museum and the Historical Society?
Well, absolutely become a member. All of I'm very familiar with the local historical societies, as you might imagine. I've worked for half of them. So membership's a real challenge for us these days. We have a lot of competition. We understand that. It's not like the old days when there were 3 organizations in town. But this helps pay the bills. And right now, some of our funding is in jeopardy because of governmental changes.
Big cultural cuts,
Yes, big cuts. That basically pays Sue's salary, so she's a little sensitive about it.
Can't blame you, Sue.
And she writes the grants. So, yes, membership. We welcome donations, of course. please come to our fundraisers, come to our events. But membership is a direct way. You are eligible for all sorts of free and wonderful events.
And it's
you
not
get
expensive.
Discounts. It's no. It's
And actually, right now, for the month of May, if you get a new subscription to Boca Magazine, you automatically get a 1-year membership to the Historical Society.
excellent.
So,
I love that.
Exactly.
Amazing.
So support
Perfect.
a local publication and support your local
that's right.
magazine.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sue. And everybody, make sure that you subscribe to Palm Paradise on all of your favorite podcast platforms as well as on YouTube. Rate and subscribe and leave a comment. And thank you all very much. Bye.